All right, welcome to Tomboy Official. It's early in the morning. I'm recording before work. It's not that early. It's like 7 a.m. But yeah, I'm thrown off, guys. First day back to work after the time change, and I'm a little thrown off. It's freaking raining in LA. I woke up to rain. Accidentally left the bathroom window open, and the toilet seat had rain on it, so that was a good start to the day. But yeah, nothing's really messed up in there. It's just water. Little droplet sprinkles. It wasn't like soaked or anything. But yeah, I woke up a little disoriented, like, what time is it? But I slept good for once. Lights out 10:30 p.m. I feel like I went to sleep before 11, maybe 11:30, I don't know. But traffic started picking up probably around a little before 6. I was probably up around 5:45-ish. Because it was dark, but I was like, why is it so loud? There's like traffic and there was some honking. And then I was like, okay, it must be morning. Like, the traffic picked up. I could hear it because of the rain on the road, because we're right on the highway. So, anyways, let's continue this gender-related discussion. So as far as queer dating goes, for this My Queer Dating series, I kind of want to talk about gender and genitalia. I mean, I don't really know what direction I'm taking. I got some notes on this, but I don't really know very specifics of where I want to go with this. It's a little early for me, but I feel like I'd just rather be a little productive and not just lay around till 8 o'clock. So as far as things like dating when it comes to gender, so I guess sex and gender, like what somebody's assigned as far as their genitalia, usually when someone's born in a hospital, basically you're assigned your gender based on what your genitalia is. And so usually the majority of people, it's pretty clear that they're going to be assigned as male or female. Some people intersex. Now, I'm not too familiar lately, at least in the US, what happens if somebody is born intersex. Do they still, automatically try to consider what gender to assign to a person? Because I know in the past that was definitely a thing. I don't know what they look at, if it's like, if it's like external organs, internal organs, like, I don't know. Like, you can technically be born with a penis and ovaries, but you wouldn't know, you wouldn't know that you have like a uterus or whatever. Like, you wouldn't know necessarily without like some kind of x-ray or some type of like inspection of some sort. That wouldn't be like something obvious. I mean, before babies are born, oftentimes if people are going to the doctor pretty regularly, mainstream hospitals have a lot of equipment, so they can kind of, you get ultrasounds and things like that, and they show the baby, and they can show a lot of details about the unborn baby. But I don't really know if in that process, like, I've never heard if in that process, if they can determine if a baby's gonna be intersex or not. So that's something I'd be interested to like look into, just to kind of know like any updates about what that process looks like, because I only know the old, the old information, like old textbook information. I think the first time I ever heard of intersex was, dude, I was in grad school. Like, it was a while, like, because I think we were talking about LGBTQIA, like what it stands for. And when somebody said intersex, I kind of took a guess at like, I don't remember what I guessed, but I guessed wrong, and one of the other staff kind of told me what it was. I remember it was me, my supervisor, that staff who became a lead later on, and maybe one other person. Like, we were in a meeting. You know how you get into the conference room early a little bit, and like there's like a few people early, and then everyone else is still kind of coming in a little later. So it was one of those situations. Everybody wasn't there. It was like me and them. And so that's when I learned what that was, what it meant. And I mean, it's possible that I've known intersex people. I mean, I don't think people really introduce themselves as intersex necessarily. Like, I would say the non-binary people I know, usually that's an early conversation. The trans people I know, usually that's an early conversation, especially in the settings where I'm usually meeting people. Like, usually it's like meeting friends of friends at like a gay club, and we're all like interacting like at like a lounge area, and like eating and having some drinks and like talking, listening to music and stuff. So I think those are spaces where people are comfortable just being like, yeah, I'm trans. And also with non-binary people, I think the majority of non-binary people I've met through dating apps, or just like friends of friends, like just mingling out in public. When somebody says their pronouns, like they might say they, them, or they, he, or she, they, or they might introduce with their pronouns. But I mean, they might not necessarily identify as non-binary, but maybe they might. But yeah, I have some friends that are kind of like in that kind of, I guess, middle part of the spectrum, that maybe they don't identify strictly as she, they, female, or sorry, strictly as she, her, female, or strictly as he, him, male, but somewhere in the middle. But I don't think I've ever met an intersex person that, like, I mean, I know of intersex people and I've met them, but I don't personally have anybody in my life right now that I know of, that I associate with, that I know for sure is an intersex person. Like, I've been to places where there's like somebody speaking and they're intersex and they'll mention that. But I've never been like, in like a friend group or a dating situation or like a mingling situation where somebody was like, yeah, I'm intersex. Like, I'm pretty sure I know quite a lot of people who probably are. I'm pretty sure I've dated quite a few people who probably are. I just feel like that's maybe something that people don't immediately start sharing, which is fine, and I feel like if you're not sleeping with them, what difference does it make what their genitalia is doing? Like, I don't know, that's kind of like a personal thing. Like, I don't really think it really matters. Like, it's not going to make much of a difference if they tell, well, it will make a difference probably if they tell people, because of how society can be. But I think, usually when you meet people, you're not really talking about your genitalia in the first place. I mean, I can't remember that many situations where I didn't know somebody and there were conversations happening about anything, even from like body hair to like cup size type things. Like, I don't know. Like, I'd say the most I'd ever heard about genitalia of any kind of situation is if somebody's like, hey, do you have a tampon, kind of thing. Like, that's about the extent of it, I would say. Like, otherwise, I think people don't really, at least in my social circles, people aren't just like outwardly talking about that kind of stuff. Like, the group of people I hang out with, you know, they're not like like, I wouldn't say they're not sexual people, that's not true, but they're not like extra outwardly like sexual. Like, it, you know, like somewhat, maybe some people dress kind of like showing a lot of, you know, cleavage or like short kind of clothing and stuff like that, like, but not necessarily like like too verbally expressive about, you know, asking people a bunch of sexual questions or talking in detail about all kinds of like sexual preferences, like in the bedroom and that kind of thing. I mean, the crew of people I hang out with, the main crew of queer people I hang out with tends to be a little bit on the reserved side, talking about those things. I mean, not completely never mentioning it, but not just like talking about it all the time. Which is, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to be going off topic with this, but that's another thing that I feel like is very, you know, I don't know how to say this. Like, I have some friends that maybe aren't queer people, and, you know, I've noticed sometimes with those groups, when they combine, there can sometimes be a person who's a non-queer person who might be often asking a whole lot of sexual questions when they're in a group with a bunch of queer people. You know, there's just a lot of like questions about not just like identity, but just sexual questions in general. And I don't really see people doing that with their straight friends. They're not like, oh, like how often do you masturbate, and like, do you use toys? And it's like we're just having dinner. Like, it's like I don't mind talking about that kind of stuff, but it's also kind of like, I feel like sometimes it's like, yeah, I've got straight friends that might be kind of more like that when they know they're around queer people. But when I've seen them around non-queer people, they're not like all up in those kind of conversations. And so it is a little tricky sometimes. But I feel like that's usually when it's like those kind of curious type people, or I don't know if it's a combination of curious / nosy. I feel like most things you can Google nowadays or just go on YouTube. You don't really need to be asking a specific person just because they're in like next to you, like, you know. And sometimes people don't want to be talking about that stuff when they don't know you or in a group of people or whatever. So, you know, I've definitely had those situations where there've been people in the group asking a bunch of really kind of personal questions, and it's just kind of like, okay, like it can get a little, I feel like there's nothing wrong with asking those questions if it's like people want to have the conversation. But I think I know people who don't want to have those conversations, and then there's other people who feel like they really want to know certain information, so they might ask, or they might be more likely to really just be asking. And that's something I've definitely noticed. But those are probably the conversations where people have kind of talked more about those types of things on their own versus, you know, because otherwise I feel like most of my queer crew of friends, like, we're not like all up in each other's business like that, like, all the time. And I like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with openly discussing anything that you want to discuss, but it kind of has to go both ways. Like, sometimes the questioning process, like, some people don't want to answer those questions. Some people don't want to do it in the middle of a bar or club like that. Like, I don't really mind talking about stuff, but I'm more like, you know, if we're kind of like maybe hiking or chilling at the beach and just like relaxing in somewhere quiet, like kind of a more private environment, not just like screaming over the DJ and like, yeah, like I like to do this kind, like other people are like hearing you and stuff, like strangers and all this. It's kind of like, I don't know, I don't have like a problem with it, but it's kind of like, sometimes it's like, that kind of stuff gets exhausting. But it just kind of depends, like sometimes you just don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not like a shame kind of thing. It's just like sometimes it's just not really the conversation you left your house to go have. Sometimes you just want to hang out with your friends and catch up and stuff, and you're not trying to talk about the details of your sex life and all that. But other times you might be. So it just depends. But definitely those experiences do come up a lot. And I'd say that those would be the experiences where it would be more likely for someone, if they were intersex, to probably be talking more along the lines of kind of what they like, what they do, like all kinds of things like that. So yeah. So when it comes to my queer dating with gender, genitalia, when it comes to maybe like what assigned gender I prefer, I personally don't have a preference of what somebody's birth certificate might say, or if they even have a birth certificate. But I might have a little bit more of a preferred presentation, and it can vary, because for me sometimes the personality can skew my interest in somebody. Overall, I tend to, if I'm just looking at a distance with not knowing anybody, usually what catches my eye is kind of more of an androgynous look. That's usually what I'm attracted to without any knowledge of a person. Like, that's usually like if I see somebody just on the street somewhere, just walking past me, or from just at a coffee shop outside on the patio, and there's people walking by, and I just like see people, or there's like a waiter, or like bartender or something, like that's usually what will catch my attention. But then like the personality attached usually would need to be like kind of more, I prefer kind of calmer people, like people that kind of have like energy to them, but like calm, like people who are like expressive, artistic, calm, like not too boisterous. I mean, I like that with like friends and stuff, but I'm just talking like if it's like romantic kind of interest, that's kind of more my vibe. Like people, when their energy is super high, it really gets me a little like I don't know what the word is, like I kind of pick up on it, and then it's a lot for me to kind of handle over long periods of time. Like, it's fun when you're out partying and stuff, but sometimes it's like, dude, I just want to chill and like read a book and have coffee. And if I'm with somebody at the beach, just like chilling at a cafe on the boardwalk or something and having a coffee, then we're just gonna go like chill and on our beach chairs in the sand or something. And like, I'm not trying to like turn up, I just want to like chill for the afternoon or whatever. So I don't mind like in a club, in a bar, in like a party, at a concert, like if somebody's like kind of just dancing around and doing their thing. But sometimes I'm just like, it can't be like that all the time, or else I feel like I'm like run a little bit ragged. I kind of like to have like conversations in quiet environments, and yeah. So when it comes to preferred identity, preferred pronouns, preferred identity, so I'll put it this way. On a personal level, just when it's just myself involved, I don't really care what anybody's not that I don't care. Like, I'm going to try to get them right, and I'm going to try to get the pronouns correct. And, you know, if I'm introducing people, I'm going to try and get that correct. And, you know, I try hard, you know, and, you know, I'm not perfect. I'll sometimes make mistakes and just correct myself on the spot. And, like, you know, that happened before when I was with some friends and I was introducing them to another group of friends, and we're out in front of a restaurant that was closed that we were trying to eat at, and these guys run up to us on the street, like, not run up to us, but they were crossing our paths because we're all on the sidewalk, and I was supposed to try to meet up with them later on, and I was with this other couple of people before that, and, you know, those guys were going to go somewhere, and I was going to meet them, and we were all introducing on the sidewalk, and one of the guys I knew really well, and these other guys he was with are friends that I know through him, and he he basically, like, I was introducing, like, I don't know, I made a comment, like, I said he about one of the people that this guy friend was there with, and then somebody else said they, and I was like, they, you know, like, because I didn't know, like, I'd seen this other person before multiple times, but I just, you know, I made an assumption. I never asked this person their pronouns, and now I know their pronouns, and from that point I just never you know, went off of it. You know, I was just like, okay, those are your pronouns, so I kept it at that. But yeah, I don't have like a romantic preference for how somebody identifies their gender or their pronouns. Just personally, I'd say the only time it really comes up, if I'm being honest, it kind of comes up when I'm with other people. Like, if I'm like, it's kind of hard to explain, but so I would say when it comes to this, like, a person and their pronouns or their gender identity, I guess the best I can describe it is, like, say I go out on a date, you know, and I have friends that are always like, oh, are you dating anyone? Have you met anybody? Like, that kind of thing. And I'll just be like, yes or no. Like, you know, like, sometimes I've got something going on, sometimes I don't. And if I do, you know, usually I'll say that I met somebody or been talking to somebody or, you know, casually meeting somebody or whatever, or I'm interested in somebody. And a lot of times I don't really name drop, especially if this person's like on my social media routinely, then I usually won't name drop. Usually, if I know there's like a whole big of a distance, I don't know where that sentence came from. If there's a whole large distance between myself and the friend I may be talking to, like, and maybe a person that I'm interested in, like, if I know they're never going to cross paths, like, if I really start getting interested, I might say, like, so-and-so's name, you know. Sometimes the name kind of implies a gender identity or implies pronouns. Like, if I was dating someone named Susie, people would probably assume that they identify as female gender with she, her pronouns, but that might not be the case. But I notice when I tend to talk about people I'm dating, I almost always say they. Like, I almost always say they unless for sure it's she. I'll usually say they. Like when my friends are asking me about a person, I'll usually say they. Usually because the people I'm dating tend to be non-binary or tend to be, they tend to have pronouns that are like she, they, or he, they, or even like he, him, pronouns like trans guys, and it's, not uncommon for me to still say they when I'm talking about them to my friends. Like, I'm not like talking shit, I'm just like explaining, hey, I met this person online and I think they're really attractive, and me and them, went and did, went and, I don't know, rode bikes on the beach on the bike path for a while, and we went and watched a movie, and they live in whatever city or whatever. I would probably say it like that. I usually wouldn't say like me and him. When it's her, usually I'll say her, but when it's him, I usually don't say him. I think it's probably because I've dated more trans men than trans women, but also I would say I get a little careful about not wanting to out people that are trans. Like, I think about, okay, what if my friends meet this person? Like, what if I'm dating this person and they come to one of my friends' bonfires or something, and then, I don't want them to have to walk into a situation where it's like everybody already knows you're trans and like, hey, like, I feel like if somebody wants people to know that, they can say that themselves. Unless they don't really seem to mind, but I've met people who are kind of more like not too, maybe not too open. Like, I don't know. It's a tricky, like, like, I'm usually not in a situation where I'm like, hey, like, when I talk to my friends about you, like, what do you want me to say? It's kind of like, because I'm not like talking about them like in detail, like in a way where I feel their gender needs to be like an obvious thing. To me, that can be like a personal thing. So I like, if I don't know, I kind of will just say they, like, so it is. And sometimes too, I mean, I hate the terms like passing, non-passing, that kind of thing, but if somebody kind of might be more passing versus not as passing, I think about how that situation would be for somebody if they meet my friends or a friend of mine, and the whole time I've been saying like he, and then this person meets my friend Susie, who identifies as he, and they're like, it might be a little confusing. It's just, I don't know, like, there are definitely ways to have these conversations, but I feel like it's, for me, I still don't really, with dating, I don't really have a very easy time integrating like my main friend groups with like people that I'm like dating or interested in. That's just always been something that's a little complicated for me, because I don't really need to do that too much. I feel like once it gets a little more on the serious end, then it's like, okay, once I know you a little bit better, maybe I'll introduce you to my social circles. Because, I mean, I kind of get a little, like, I've had an experience with a friend or a couple friends of mine that are a little, like, there's nothing wrong with this, but, like, they're a little, like, they'll get, like, everybody's number when they first meet them or something, or ask for people's numbers and stuff, and so it's kind of like, I could see them doing that, like, there's certain people in my friend groups, and some of my friend groups that just, socially, that's, I know it's a little weird, but it's like they kind of do that, and then I kind of get a little curious, like, what is this friend going to be saying to this other friend of mine, or to this person who I'm dating, if they exchange numbers and now they're like talking on the side kind of thing. And say if I'm not really too, say if I'm dating a person and something is kind of happening where it's like, okay, we're not going to be dating anymore, but then I have this other friend that's like inviting them out and stuff. I don't really want to have to be like, I don't know if it's called gatekeeping, but I don't really want to be having to kind of be like, yo, like, me and that person broke up, like, stop inviting them to barbecues. You know what I mean? It's kind of like weird. But yeah, I definitely have a couple friends offhand that do invite other people. They try to get everybody's numbers, and they will be just like texting other people that I've introduced them to, even though it's like, I don't know, like, it's just one of those things that for me I have to think about, because I know my friends, and some of those friends I know kind of how they are, so that's kind of something that kind of worries me a little bit more about, like, integrating my friend groups with somebody I'm dating. It's like, well, I don't want them coming around all the time if I'm not, like, say if something happens, like, I don't really want to have to be interacting with them all the time. So it's kind of like, yeah, like, I just kind of can't, unless I want to see them while I'm seeing my friends, I usually won't be introducing everybody, because if they all start like befriending one another, then it's like, now you're part of the crew, and then if something happens, I don't want other people being like, oh, like, me and the person you were just seeing, that you guys kind of broke up, and now we're gonna go, I'm inviting them to, like, my sister's baby shower or something. It's like, what? Like, like, that kind of thing to me is like, okay, like, that's weird. Yeah. And also, I guess another thing with preferred gender identity, and pronouns, like, for my own preferences with other people, if I'm dating them, I guess, yeah, the only part that kind of gets a little tricky, it can be just really that when I'm talking to my friends and I'm just kind of explaining about why I like this person that I met, however I met them, and we're interacting, and like how it is interacting with them and why I like them and that kind of thing. I think a lot of times, because I date people of all different types of gender identities, I think a lot of times my friends don't really know what to expect. It's not like, oh, you're all almost exclusively dating, cis females, and then all of a sudden here's like a trans guy. It's like, no, I've dated a variety of people, but it's, I feel like sometimes it's not clear to my friends what the gender is, and sometimes I don't really think I need them to know that, because it's like, especially if they're not meeting them, it's like, well, what difference does it make what the gender is anyways? But I do think about that, because it's like sometimes people aren't fully out about, their gender identity or their pronouns even. They might not be comfortable with people knowing their pronouns, or they might be questioning things, or they might be having a tough time with stuff. I've definitely dated, non-binary people who were having like a lot of a struggle with their, gender presentation, like things like facial hair, clothing style, hairstyle, body image, physique, things like that, and just like maybe something happening at work or with their family, So the last thing I need is to introduce somebody to, a crew of friends or a couple of friends or a single, friend from my regular cruise, and have that person being a little intrusive, to a person who I already know is like going through a lot related to their gender. And then it's like, now here's another person that you meet, and now it's like this whole situation happening. I feel like it's not fair to them. So I am pretty careful with that kind of stuff, but also it's like some people really don't care. So I think it's person to person, and it kind of I consider the situation, but sometimes it can be a little like maybe somebody assumed, like I've had situations where somebody assumed I was dating a man until I mentioned that they were a mom, and then they were like, oh, like it's a woman, because I guess I was saying they maybe, and they just assumed it was a guy, and they kept saying he, and I'm just like, what? Like, I don't know where all of a sudden they started saying he, and I was like, it's not a guy, and so it was kind of like, but it was fine. I mean, with that same person I had been dating that had kids, one person was really cool about it. Another person was really kind of like intrusive and weird about it. So sometimes I just never know what I'm going to get. And then I've had other friends that were just kind of intrusive about stuff too, where they just kind of felt like, like I mentioned, like people just over sexualizing the whole, like every single conversation topic is like sexual. They're always talking about sex. They're always, talking about, that kind of stuff, or trying to talk about that kind of stuff. And it's like, just because I'm gay doesn't mean that I only just, I mean, I think about sex a lot, but I'm not saying that that's the only thing. I mean, I have other stuff to do. I'm not just like, that's not the only thing about me. It's one thing about me, but it's not like the only thing in my life that exists. Like, I work, I have hobbies, I have interests, I do a lot of stuff. Like, I talk about it all the time, like I like to write poetry, I like to write music, practice music, I play guitar, I make electronic music on the computer, I love snowboarding, I go to the gym, I like hiking, I go to the beach. Like, I feel like I talk about this kind of stuff even when I'm trying not to talk about it all the time, like incessantly, like I still mention it. So for someone to just be like, whenever they want to talk, let's talk about if you're dating somebody, who you're dating, and like your sex life, it's kind of like, okay, like that's not always something that's happening like very actively, like every single day. Like I'm not always just like in it like that. And some people are, and that's fine, but I'm like, ever since the pandemic, I've definitely been having a lot more days in the house, just kind of a little bit more of a homebody, a little less of the party animal, and a little less, that makes me a little less likely to be out and about all the time, meeting new people and all that kind of stuff. Not that I never meet new people or that I never go out, but I'm not going out like 3 times a week anymore, to like gay bars and clubs and stuff like that. That literally was my life. Like, I would go out like probably at least 2, if not 3 times, maybe even sometimes 4 times a week. I'd be out like Fridays, Saturdays, and sometimes, usually it would be like Wednesday nights or something. But sometimes it would be Wednesday nights, Fridays after work, Saturdays, Sundays, it would be like 2 days of the weekend, and then Friday nights and Wednesday nights. And so I was out a lot before. And then sometimes I'd just have a completely quiet weekend. But now it's like more rare. Like, I probably go out maybe once or twice a month on weekends like that, maybe. And then outside of that, I'm mostly kind of just chilling, saving money so I can move. So I just work and chill. And I'm fine with it. And so let's see what else. I'm gonna wrap this up soon because I gotta log into work. But I wrote preferred genitalia. I don't have a preference necessarily. Of somebody else's genitalia. I mean, I would say so long as they're caring for their health with their genitalia, that's the only thing that would be like a attraction kind of issue. Maybe if I don't think I need to go into too much detail about that, but cleanliness is important. I don't think I want to be like concerned on a cleanliness level. That to me would be like, all right, like maybe not today, or we got to jump in a shower or something. Like, I don't know, like I mean, of course things don't have to be like hospital surgical procedure kind of like clean, but if we were just if it's been a long day and we're hiking at the gym and stuff like that, and it's not very likely that I'm gonna want to come home and straight away just like hook up with somebody. Like I don't know if I really have too much of a pig mentality with that kind of stuff. I mean, I get that people do, like some people have like a kink around that, and I kind of don't. I like at least newly showered, or grab a wet wipe kind of thing. Like, at least grab a wet wipe or a washcloth or something, wipe something off, but other than that, I don't really care what the genitalia is. I don't care how people prefer to their genitalia, regardless of what it actually is or what it looks like. During sexual encounters, like, I'll call it whatever you want me to call it. I think, I don't know why I wrote this as an example, how, like, Ashley Gavin on the podcast, where it was the one with Ashley, Brienne, and Jade, and they were talking about boobs, like their own, and how they refer to them, and the role that their own boobs play in their own lives and things like that. I mean, that's kind of an interesting conversation, and I know people have different ways of labeling different parts of their own bodies and what they prefer to call them and stuff. Like, I don't know if I can say the terms on here. I don't know what gets things taken down, so I feel like I've gone quite a distance of saying things on this podcast, but yeah, I don't know. People get upset about so much stuff. Like, I don't even know, like, what's too explicit anymore. Like, I really don't. Like, it's hard for me to tell. Like, I don't have kids, so I'm not really thinking about, like, what's age 13 versus age 18. Like, what are they gonna come across, kind of thing. Like, it's really hard for me to really, like, I don't know. I don't want to say certain terminology, but basically anybody of any gender identity can call their genitalia whatever it is that they want to refer to it as. And I guess when it comes to prosthetics, again, not a preference. I don't really care if people have prosthetics or not. I know it can be kind of a sensitive subject. Like, some people have them because of discomfort and dysphoria. Some people have them because, like, I'm thinking, like, okay, like, for example, like a strap-on, right? If somebody has a strap-on like with a harness. And some people might wear that outside of actual sexual activity. They might wear it to the club, and then they meet somebody and they already have it on. It might not be like a gender thing. It might just be like it might be a kink. It might be just something they're comfortable with. Or if they know they're gonna hook up with somebody, like, where else are you gonna keep it? Like, you can't keep it in your pocket, or I don't know, like, unless you have cargo pants or something, or if you have a purse or a fanny pack, I guess you could keep it in there. But it's like, that might be a little, I don't know, I just don't know. Like, some people, like, say if they exclusively are into strapping other people, I've known people who wear them, but sometimes it's not really like for a prosthetic type of like genital organ. And then other times people wear them as a prosthetic genital organ, like they like to have the package, or they like to have something there that's kind of more like a realistic one. Some people like more of like a realistic one. There's just a lot of variety. So I mean, I don't really care too much. Like, same with like up top, like I've known people to wear like a bra with like kind of like implanted breasts in it, and things like that. Like, it's fine. Like, you do you. Like, I'm not gonna knock it. Like, but it is something that maybe you might not know right away that a person has that happening, or has that on, or is wearing that, or whatever. Like, you might not know, but it doesn't freak me out. The reason it doesn't freak me out is because for me, it doesn't really matter what gender a person is or what their genitalia is. Like, I feel like if I did have like a very, very strong preference, that might be different. But for me personally, in my own life, that is not something that is any kind of deal breaker. And then with intersex, so I can only speculate, because even if I have dated an intersex person, I was not aware of it. Like, nobody, in my personal dating experience, has ever directly identified to me as, I'm setting up my work desk here. No one personally has ever identified directly to me as saying that, they're an intersex person. So, I think I probably shouldn't have kept this plugged in for so many days. Alright. But, yeah. So, that's kind of how I see things. That's kind of my experiences with things. And I need to log into work, so I'm gonna log off of here for now. Jeez, I'm freezing. I need to put on clothes. But, alright. Thanks for listening.